Angus. Okay. Hello. Hello. Hi. Ninjani. Yo. It looks so cloudy over there. It looks so cloudy. Excuse me. Oh. Okay. It doesn't feel like it's helping at all. What a strange, strange situation. Okay. I think that's as good as it's going to get. Hello and welcome to this reading. Ooh, pardon me. I'm trying to set up. Nkosi yami, awungeki. Ngivelelwe. Ooh. Okay, here we are. I'm gonna pop that over there. Sanbonani ninjani. I hope that you are well. Welcome to this reading for the full moon in Sagittarius 2025. Such an incredible, incredible full moon. It's such good vibes. I don't want to lie. You know, at the beginning of the year, we spoke about how it's going to go slow and then everything's going to feel like it's all happening all at once. And definitely had that with eclipse season and how it all went down, especially when you think about the passing of the Pope and the intensity that just happened March, April, May, so many transits, such major transits, and we were really shifting quite deep and having to dig really deep, especially with the shadow work and really needing to reconcile with those parts of ourselves. And I think we saw also in the collective, the conversations we were having were different, and the depth at which we had to address certain things. And now we have what feels like reprieve, what is reprieve. We have this moment right now where we get to breathe into that sense of opportunity, that sense that, hey, things might actually work out. Believe in that sense right now. Believe in it. I'm going to start by introducing myself. Mina nginguMakhosi Nomabutho, and this is Sangoma Society, where we demystify the astral and the ancestral. And this is the full moon reading for the full moon in Sagittarius. So, with every full moon, we have a tension that is brought about by the sun being in one sign and the moon being in the opposite sign. And when these signs are in these opposite houses, what they're doing is creating a tension that illuminates the shadow aspects that this particular lunation wants to bring our attention to. With this full moon, it is actually so much lighter than I think we have had in ages. Um, we have got the ruler of Sagittarius, which is Jupiter, in its sign of exaltation, which is Cancer. Yo, yo, Makhosi. So this is really like the energy supporting everything that this full moon wants us to do is really all there. And I really want us to take a moment to allow faith to be restored, to allow that sense of optimism to return to us where it is possible for us at this moment in time, because that's really what this lunation is bringing. You know, it's such a gentle shift, such a gentle full moon. We just had Jupiter entering Taurus over the last 20, Jupiter entering Cancer over the last 24 hours. So that soft landing for this full moon and the sun being in Gemini. Gemini is a pretty good place for the sun. Gemini loves the attention, loves to be upfront, loves to be seen, and the sun is okay there. Um, and what we're experiencing is this ability to kind of go inward with Jupiter in Cancer, with Sagittarius being where it is, feel what we're feeling, right? And vocalize it and make it so that we can articulate what we're feeling quite easily with this moon. And the thing with Jupiter in Cancer in general is that it wants to go deeper. We just had Jupiter in Gemini, which was the curse of the podcast. That's when we really saw the podcast mic pandemic running these streets, and the loudest voices being the most influential, not necessarily those bringing the deepest value, but just the loudest voices. And that is Jupiter and Gemini. That is just all here. A lot of talk can feel very superficial, but when we have Jupiter in Cancer, we feel comforted by depth. We are open to going deeper. We are open to sinking into the truth. Um, Jupiter rules the 10th house, mm, which is expansion, which is career. Um, that's what Jupiter brings, expansion. And Jupiter spends a year in each sign. So Jupiter in Cancer is really like it's where we want where we want Jupiter to be. And I don't want to exaggerate the fact that it's going to bring a shift. You're feeling the shift, and the encouragement here is to lean into it, to trust it, and to allow the shift into something deeper to happen. We've already spoken about some of the yo, yay, Makhosi, recent shifts, transits that have happened that are going to be bringing a sense of accountability to the table, especially that Cancer, Saturn moving into Aries, right? And we actually are going to have Jupiter aspecting Saturn in Aries. Um, they're just now for starting on the 15th of June, there's going to be a square between Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Aries. So remember again, Saturn in Aries says that it's time to actually be about it, not just dream about it, not just talk about it. We're talking about Jupiter coming back into Cancer. So we spoke with the new moon about how this transit, this shift was going to bring into our cognizance those people whose awakenings, spiritual awakenings, have happened in the course of the last 10 years, that now it's going to feel like go time. Now it's going to be that need to take the next step because, again, that need for depth, that need for discipline, that is Saturn in Aries with regards to applying yourself to the things that you have seen in the astral, to the things that you have dreamt, and not just on a superficial level, but remembering that Saturn governs structure. So there have been certain cultures, especially with respect to where Saturn was in the last 3 years, which was Saturn in Pisces, where there is an ungovernability. And I will speak to specifically ebungomeni, ebunyangeni, phakathi kwabalaphi, ukuthi kuqhubeke umthetho nje wokungalawuleki, with respect to the prominence zezinto nje that were never above board historically ekulapheni, izinto ezifana nokuthi umuntu athi uyolapha noma uyokhulisa abantu ethongweni yena angakaze athwase. Izinto ezifana nokuthi umuntu athi hhayi idlozi ngazuthi lilele malivuse ngesithwalo, nje imihlohlwana enjalo. These are things which we are going to see now having needing to be answered for, especially with Saturn in Aries, because we're looking at that discipline and the practical application of that discipline. And when we see Jupiter and Jupiter in Cancer aspecting Saturn in Aries, we're going to see that impact over the course of June, July into August. Yo, Makhosi. Oy. Yay. Yay. Makhosi. By the time we come, Makhosi. Makhosi. By the time we come to our Lionsgate on the 8th of August, when it is time to call ourselves in Sizinze, I think we are going to have seen a lot of revelations in the patterns as they play out in our lives over the next 2 months. We're going to get a good, clear picture of where to turn our attention during that time of retreat that August is calling for. That is when we go through the Lion's Gate leading up to the African New Year, that time, that season, Yoguzinza, that season of being inside and being with yourself, that mirrors that earlier part of the year that we have between March and April, before the astrological new year. That season, when it happens in the second half of the year, where our focus should be is going to be highlighted by the things that kind of spark off and remain as a lingering issue from the 15th of June, when we have this Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Aries square. where we feel that tension in our lives. And again, with respect to spirituality, there is a call to accountability. There is a call to sitting with your truth, your bigger picture, and where your spiritual bypassing has happened, where you've taken some chances, perhaps, where there may have been betrayal. Something is calling that in. Um, Perhaps it is the Jupiter Kazemi, which is happening later this month, on that other week, on June the 18th. Hmm. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling it. I can't tell you which aspect it is exactly that is bringing that accountability so strongly. Um, but I want to come back to the 15th of June before we move forward. Jupiter in Cancer did its big one, and it's just going to be kind of running the whole month. Like it's the energy that's like carrying us through the rest of June. Because again, also on June the 15th is Mars in Leo squaring Uranus in Taurus. So that for me is combustive energy. It can be very explosive. Tensions, things can really pop off, right? So, in terms of we're seeing protests in different parts of the world, we might see an increase in that. We might see a crescendo. We might see a bit of a peak on the 15th. That should be on Sunday. We can expect like anything can happen. To be fair, anything can happen. I am curious about where Saturn and Aries. So we still have an ongoing conjunction with the Saturn and Aries and Neptune and Aries that is playing out at the moment. And that also um, contributes to that combustive energy because remember again that Neptune in Aries is Neptune's most revolutionary station. So, where things are most combustive for Neptune, where we feel the strongest sense of urgency around, yo, yay, Hoy, Makhosi, Makhosi. Yay, Makhosi. Where we feel the strongest sense of urgency around taking action for the dreams that we have, that we hold for ourselves, right? So when we see those transits, um, when we look at this upcoming Sunday, the 15th of June, what I can say is if you're going to be outside, be careful. Conceal your identity. If you're somewhere where there could be consequences for where you are, um, protect yourself. Be prepared to protect yourself. And understand that things could erupt into something bigger than what is initially planned. That the energy of that day can become something bigger. Um, for us here at home, people, what we can look at is situations with regards to relationships. Um, there is, uh, like I said, tension there. And with Venus in Taurus, The energy I'm hearing and seeing with respect to romantic relationships there is that there might be uncomfortable conversations being had about money. They might even be fighting about money. Um, Venus is our material, what is beautiful. Um, And just with the tension of the day, and Uranus also in Taurus, although not conjuncting Venus at the moment, just that square with Leo, how that all plays out, there's again that tension. And when I see that tension, I go, okay, maybe what we want to do here is be mindful of how we bring things up, the conversations we're having, how we're going about them, um, allowing ourselves to go deeper. Again, remembering that we'll still be coming off the energy of this full moon, which will be tomorrow on the 11th of June. So it's not that long after the full moon. So that strength of the depth of Jupiter is a Jupiter in Cancer, and Jupiter ruling this full moon is still there. So there is a possibility that we can go deeper with the conversations that we want to have, and we needn't necessarily move at like Leo's rapid fire, which is, Mars and Leo. The thing is that these are the personal planets, Mars and Leo, Venus and Leo. Those are the fast moving planets. So we call them personal planets, because when we look at our birth charts, those planets are very individual in terms of the signs that they will occupy. Our slower moving planets are the ones where we look at them as collective, right? So in this case, Uranus, right? And Uranus being in that final degree, in those final degrees of Taurus before it is set to move out of Taurus and into Gemini. It is a very revolutionary station for Uranus. Taurus wants us to think about, again, material. So it's that sense of home. It's that sense of what matters. How do we define home? Who gets to say what about home? So when we're talking about those difficult conversations, right? When we're talking about those protests, it's about that question, like home in the material sense, in the sense of what makes home beautiful, what makes home warm. And when we look at where things can become sensitive and combustible, those are the themes, and money. In this case, in the collective sense, it's definitely capitalism, definitely questioning the viability and the validity of that at this time. The question around that is really springing up more and more. And historically, when that has happened, it hasn't actually led us to a more altruistic place, but perhaps because there are other movements in the sky that happen concurrently, notably Neptune in Aries, which is again, revolution with respect to dreams, to visions, to how do we bring those dreams to pass, which is again supported by Saturn in Aries, which wants to take action, disciplined action, especially on where Saturn has spent the last 3 years, which is in the realm of our dreams, not exactly its best place when it was in Pisces, but Pisces, Saturn and Pisces really gave us an opportunity to think deeply about what we are willing to do for our dreams, to accomplish our dreams. And now where we are is the time to actually act on all those things that we said we were willing to do, right? and the action can actually yield more than we would anticipate at this time. Because again, Jupiter is the planet that rules expansion, and it's just ingressed into Cancer, just entered the sign, and it's going to be making like waves in the next few days as it goes into that Kazimi on the 18th. So early next week. Yo, yo, Makos, yo, Makos, he. I believe it will be next week, Wednesday. Yo, Makos, Makos, Makos. I believe it will be next week, Wednesday, when we will see that Jupiter Kazimi in Taurus on the 18th of June, in Cancer on the 18th of June. And that is really going to be when we feel Jupiter in the heart of the sun. So everything about that day is kind of going to amplify this energy that we're already feeling. It's just going to sink deeper into it and really, like, I'm going to say, if there's a risk you wanted to take, um, I'd do it now. I would really do it now. If there's something that you've wanted to try that you've been scared to go ahead with, I would say now. I would say now's the time. The planets support it. They support that courage, and Jupiter will expand your efforts. And when you have such benevolent energy on your side, right before the new moon in Cancer, which will be on the 25th. Really, honestly, the next 2 weeks are like, why? Why would you hold back right now? Why would you hold back? This is not the time for that. I think even individually, I'm quite sure that you can feel yourself breathing a little differently, that there's just a little bit less resistance that you're up against right now. Trust that. It's okay to trust. It's okay. Sometimes things can be working out in your favor. We all have Jupiter somewhere we all have Jupiter somewhere in our chart. We all have Cancer somewhere in our chart. And those houses are where we're going to receive the most benefit at this time. Um, the efforts where we see Cancer are going to amplify the results where we see Jupiter. So you can go to your chart, your own birth chart, and just look at, even if there's no planets in that house that is ruled by Cancer on your chart, just look at what that house represents. Say, for instance, if you have Cancer in the fifth house, um, that's like children, fame, social, community, family, right? And then if you have Jupiter, say, in the 10th, and then that's career, right? So efforts that you put into your career will benefit your children, right, over the course of the next year. Does that make sense? It's like that. So when you go in and look at how that affects you personally, that's kind of how you can interpret it. And what I'm going to bring into our collective awareness here is where we were the last time that Jupiter was in Cancer, 2013 to 2014. There was a conscientizing that was happening. There was a shift creatively where things were beginning to become more tangible. Um, we had just it was like we had stopped using the word blogger as an insult, and it was just the first wave, the beginning of what would become influencer culture. So I think that we're going to see, in terms of that aspect of community, what influence looks like and how it shows up and how it takes shape in our communities, I think is going to uh, become deeper. It's not going to be as superficial as it has been. It's not just authenticity and relatability that people are looking for. There is now a need for going deeper, and it is supported in this year. And I encourage it for anybody who feels that they're ready to go deeper with their lives. This is the time. If you want to go deeper with your spiritual practice, this is the time. If you want to go deeper with your artistic practice, this is the time. Um, if you don't want to be making babies, um, this is the time to be more careful on that. If you are trying to conceive, this transit the next year is a very fertile time for that. If there are like ideas, really big ideas that you want to implement, this is the time. This is the time. I would encourage that you go for it, that you again take that risk, especially right now, like in these 2 weeks, like allow yourself to do a thing that you may not have perhaps ordinarily done in the past. Allow that, like, not maybe just not ordinarily done, but something that you may have been afraid to do, something that you may have, where imposter syndrome may have held you back. Right now, if you've got the goods, you're going to be okay. Like, your courage will be rewarded. So take heed, do the thing, don't hold back. Okay. Okay, it is a full moon, and for us here at Sangoma Society, we are going to be going into clearing into consciousness. And for this month, we will be integrating our shadow. And I love how gently supported that is, and how at this moment in time, you're going to manifest so much by acknowledging and integrating that which is the shadow. Knowing what is your limiting belief, knowing what part of you feels wounded, and giving that part of yourself space, compassion, and acknowledgement is going to free up the higher parts of your conscious mind to manifest, right? To just attune to the vibration of the things that you actually want to bring into fruition. And this month, if you are joining Clearing into Consciousness for the first time, you will receive a voucher for your first month free for Pivoting into Purpose, which is our new moon ritual, which will be supported by the new moon in Cancer. So if you're looking to prepare yourself for that mid-year solstice and really bringing the shift that this year, 2025, can still bring, and using all the benefic energy that our current transits support, then my guidance to you, my encouragement to you would be, um, join us in pivoting into purpose and get that first month free. Join us. Let's see what your higher self reveals to you, how you can timeline jump and walk in the frequency of your highest purpose. Bageti, it has been so, so wonderful to be with you. Um, I'm absolutely loving this full moon. I'm like it feels good, and I want you to trust that it is as good as it feels. And I know that for some of us, the shadow work can be really intimidating, and the last few months have really been going to a really deep dark place, with the aspects that we've had, that the transits that we've been going through with these full moons. But this time we still can expect deep revelations. Yo, yo, yo. But trust that these revelations are not being shown to you. Eesh. Makhosi. Not These revelations are not being shown to you to shatter your faith in the world, but rather what you are being shown now is that which you need to see, ukuthi as in ulazi iqiniso, know the truth, so that when you step into your next chapter, you're not held back by the lies and the stories of the falsehoods that can cloud our efforts, right? Mina bakithi, okundlula lokhu angicabangi ukuthi kusasekhona. NginguMakhosi Nomabutho. This is Sangoma Society, where we demystify the astral and the ancestral. And you can find us on sangomasociety.co.za, where you can get your personalized year readings, your consultations, your cleansings, imiti, and the resources that we also offer in light of our full moon rituals, our new moon rituals, and our courses for prospering in providence, clearing into consciousness, and pivoting into purpose. And for those of us who are sitting here and going, oh my God, or o'clock, when you are talking about Yumina Loyo, who doesn't know what their story is with their um, ancestral calling, their spiritual awakening, we have answers from our ancestors. And I know that sometimes that spiritual calling comes knocking when things are at their toughest. And that is why Answers from Our Ancestors is absolutely free for you to use. And I encourage you to enroll in that if you do not have the means to enroll into anything else. Begin to interrogate your relationship with your ancestors, your relationship with your understanding of what your spirituality is, and your relationship with yourself. Because when we don't interrogate, we get lost in um, what is caused by circumstance versus what is caused by our own actions or the interference of others. And it can cloud our discernment. So the sooner you begin to actionably, intentionally, and deliberately establish those relationships with yourself and with your ancestors, the quicker it is for you to expand your discernment. Okay? All right. You can find everything, including personal readings from myself, on sangomasociety.co.za. Until next time, mina ngingumakhosi Nomabutho, and this is Sangoma Society. We hope that this offering has watered your garden. Bekukuhle ukuba nani. Makhosi. Yo!